Refinement of Antichrist. Trilogy by Natalia Foley.
Chapter 26. Suddenly Casey stopped. He opened his eyes and looked around the room with surprise. "Where am I?" he mumbled. Then he recognized Hoover and smiled weakly. "What happened?" "It's all right," Hoover reassured him. "You were in a trance." "Oh," Casey nodded, feeling tired. "I'm sorry. If I interrupted, I don't remember anything I just said. Please excuse me. Please continue." Ronald looked at Hoover, seeking permission to proceed. Hoover gave a subtle nod. "Gentlemen," Ronald said, "we don't have much time for interruptions. If you'll allow it, let's keep moving. You still need to learn a great deal more." "But—" It was William Donovan speaking. He paused, searching for the right words. Was it true?" Hoover finished the sentence for him. "I suppose so. At least we should treat it as true for now." "And how is this relevant to our meeting?" asked Alden Strong. His tone carried a hint of defiance, almost as if he were asking, "Are you serious? Did you call us here to listen to delirious nonsense while we have so much else to do?" But Hoover was unyielding. Calmly he replied, "Mr. Strong, you of all people should pay even closer attention, as you will be primarily responsible for dealing with this matter." He said it in such an indisputable manner that no further interruptions followed. Hoover scanned the eyes of those present, then looked at Ronald and nodded, a silent signal that he could continue. And so he did. "What you just heard," Ronald said, gesturing toward Casey, "is a crucial explanation of why and how a small high mountain country, previously unknown to the rest of the world until the beginning of the 20th century, suddenly became one of the most desirable destinations for adventurers seeking access to the alleged secrets hidden in Tibetan caves. These secrets were rumored to belong to either aliens or an unknown ancient civilization. Numerous European travelers brave enough to reach this remote region encountered a small, isolated Tibetan tribe. From these encounters, a myth emerged, a legend claiming that Tibetan monks were gatekeepers, protecting powerful magical secrets. The belief arose that whoever obtained these secrets would rule the world. One of the most famous figures who claimed access to this so-called secret knowledge was Madame Blavatskaya, an American citizen of Russian descent, half insane and half delusional. Nevertheless, her teachings about Tibetan secrets sparked a new spiritual movement across the globe, including in Germany. Her ideas about Tibetan mysticism and her racial theories became the foundation for a new spiritual society formed in Germany known as the Vril Society. In 1919, the Vril Society gave rise to the Thule Society, which adopted the swastika as its symbol. Needless to say, the entire top tier of the German political elite that would come to rule the country emerged from this Thule Society. That is why everything I am telling you now is so important. You cannot understand the essence of modern Germany without being aware of the Thule Society's teachings, no matter how irrational or insane they may seem. Ronald paused to take a deep breath. He expected questions, but perhaps it was still too early. The room remained silent, attentive. He had no choice but to continue. "Now let's return to the Tibetan mountains. From being a forgotten, isolated, and seemingly barbaric tribe, they suddenly transformed into the spiritual capital of the world. Nothing in their history could have prepared them for this role. All they knew were meditation, shamanism, and senseless, bloody rituals involving human sacrifices. They were aware of their mission to protect the caves containing strange, motionless bodies, but they had no understanding of its true meaning. For centuries, they remained completely isolated from the rest of the world. But when civilization finally reached their remote location, they were infected by the greed and ambition of the West. The Tibetan Lama began to suspect that he possessed something of immense value, something that could grant him the power to rule the world. But how? He was still sitting atop the highest mountain, isolated from the very world he intended to dominate. Then he devised a strategy. He needed a puppet, someone who would act as his proxy. He would remain the master, the manipulator. At first this seemed nearly impossible, but the temptation was strong, and then the idea came to him: send a messenger. Thus, in the early 1920s, the Tibetan monks instructed their agents within the Thule Society to seek contact with Adolf Hitler. Bill Donovan, who had been listening with intense curiosity, suddenly interrupted. "But why Hitler?" Ronald hesitated. He hadn't expected that question and looked to Hoover for guidance. Hoover gave an almost imperceptible nod. Ronald knew this meant help was coming. Casey, his voice weak and raspy, like that of an old man, spoke up. "There was a ritual," he began, then looked at Hoover for permission to continue. Hoover closed his eyes slightly, encouraging him. Casey went on. "While the Lama formed the intent to rule the world, he sought an answer. Who could be his puppet? He clearly could not rule the world himself from the top of his remote mountain. So he used a mystical ritual to determine the best incarnate for his purpose." "Okay," Hoover interrupted. "For the sake of time, let's shorten the story. Bonpo Lama, through his mystical ritual, determined that Hitler would be the ideal vessel for his purposes. Am I right?" He glanced at Casey, partly to justify the interruption, partly to reinforce his own statement with the authority of the prophet. Casey nodded in agreement. Ronald continued. "So the Tibetan monk in green gloves, calling himself the Führer, initiated the creation of the Thule Society and began indoctrinating its members. Two of them, Dietrich Eckart and Alfred Rosenberg, were selected to become Hitler's mentors. Both were brainwashed and completely reprogrammed by the Führer. Eventually, Eckart and Rosenberg approached Hitler, who was at the time a complete nobody, with an offer he couldn't refuse. At their first meeting in the Wagner House in Bavaria, they promised to lead him to the position of emperor of the entire world. In exchange, he was to follow their instructions without question. For nearly 3 years, Eckart and Rosenberg methodically educated Hitler in all aspects of Tibetan religious traditions and rituals. It was nothing short of a specialized indoctrination program. Their mission? To turn Hitler into a secret weapon, blindly serving the enormous ambitions of the Bonpo Lama. Later, the efforts of Eckart and Rosenberg were reinforced by two other Thule members, Karl Haushofer and Rudolf Hess. They completed Hitler's indoctrination while he was imprisoned in 1921. Haushofer and Hess spent nearly every day with Hitler in jail, implanting racial theories and other doctrines into his receptive mind. This is how Mein Kampf was created. Hitler's rise began immediately upon his release from prison. He established a new Tibetan order under the umbrella of the National Socialist Party. All the attributes of Tibetan religion were present: the symbolism, the rituals, the ceremonies, and above all, the mission to rule the world. Ronald was interrupted again, this time by the bold officer Ernest Joseph King. He seemed visibly irritated, struggling to maintain composure, though his voice betrayed his frustration. "All right, we get it. Tibetan monks, Hitler, mysticism. But why in the world are we wasting our valuable time on this bullshit? Can anyone explain? What is this? A mystical conspiracy plot? What's the significance?" Hoover, clearly in charge, remained calm and confident. "Calm down, officer," he said in a slightly paternal tone. "Do you really think I called you all here just to listen to meaningless rambling? If so, you'd have to assume I'm suffering from a serious mental illness. But if you still believe I'm sane and rational, then please be patient and listen carefully, because your own future, the future of our country, and perhaps the future of the world, depends on what we decide here today. So just listen, and trust me. It will lead you to an important discovery." Ernest King chuckled, unconvinced, but the argument about Hoover's sanity was unassailable. He obeyed. Ronald continued, still confident and composed, showing no sign of being rattled by the interruptions. Even before Hitler came to power in Germany, he launched Tibetan expeditions to uncover more secrets hidden by the stone idols in the caves guarded by the Bonpo Lama. The Bonpo Lama celebrated the success of his new initiative. His plan was working. The stone idols treated their new visitors extremely favorably. They allowed them access to complex, hard-to-understand information, delivering fragments of advanced knowledge through images, mental narratives, and symbolic transmissions. As a result, within a few years, Hitler's scientists received tons of highly significant technical data. This information needed to be studied, reverse-engineered, and implemented. According to the stone idols, the knowledge contained instructions on how to harness new forms of energy, how to build advanced weapons, aircraft, and more. Hitler was told that by using these technologies, he would be able to rule the world. The prophecies of the Bonpo Lama were turning into reality. Not only that, the Bonpo Lama promised Hitler unconditional spiritual support, assuring him that everything he attempted would be destined to succeed. When, in 1933, Hitler legally took power as Chancellor of Germany, he immediately formed a government composed mostly of loyal Thule Society members. From that moment on, the Bonpo Lama was able to manipulate the course of Western civilization using Hitler's body and mind as a proxy. The first step towards worldwide supremacy had been successfully achieved. The next step was far more complex. While Hitler carried out his role, preparing the world for total domination under the Bonpo Lama's control, the Lama himself had to prepare for his own rebirth into a new, fully developed life. In 1936, while everything was going according to plan, Bonpo Lama 43 was dying, and Bonpo Lama 44 was born. A little boy was discovered by senior monks following the instructions of Bonpo Lama 43. The new Lama, the future ruler of the world, was identified in 1937, taken from his family, and brought to the monastery to be raised. Since he was still too young, the most loyal supporter and friend of Bonpo Lama 43 was appointed as his regent. Another close ally of the Lama, Heinrich Harrer, became Hitler's closest friend and was appointed leader of the Nazi SS death squad. All members of the Thule and Vril societies were formally integrated into the SS. Tibetan expeditions continued with relentless persistence. Based on information retrieved from the Universal Information Bank, Hitler developed advanced machinery, technology kept in the highest secrecy to this day. In 1937, the Nazis had already created and tested a new aircraft known as the Feuerball, a flying disc. It moved at speeds unknown to human civilization, utilized energy sources we cannot comprehend, and could operate underwater with the same incredible speed. A secret scientific research base was established in caves discovered by the Nazis in Antarctica. The Arctic base served as an emergency facility and a hub for the development of weapons and machinery of unknown superhuman qualities. German flying saucers were already invading space beyond Earth. They've been sighted in many regions: Bermuda, the Atlantic Ocean, and elsewhere. In addition, the Germans are developing a superbomb. I'm not the expert to explain its exact capabilities, but it should be capable of instantly exterminating hundreds of thousands of people at once. If the Germans succeed in their research and technical development, the entire world will fall under the control of the Nazis, or more precisely, under the control of the barbaric leader Bonpo Lama 44, who is yet to grow into a man. Ronald paused, took a deep breath, and concluded, looking at Hoover. "That's all, gentlemen. I'm done. Any questions?" There was a long, heavy silence. Alden Strong was the first to break his almost catatonic state. "Is this for real?" he asked, not addressing anyone in particular, but rather the entire room. Surprisingly, Hoover, who had been guiding the entire meeting, did not respond. Instead, Mr. Tesla, one of the greatest inventors of all time, began to speak. "It's all real, gentlemen. I didn't know the full story, but I always sensed that something like this must exist. The officers, already overwhelmed with information, did not interrupt. They wanted to hear more. They were shocked, yet they now felt the urgency of the meeting. They understood why they had been summoned. It was a matter of utmost importance for national security. Defense was their profession, and if they were facing an unknown threat, it was their duty to learn everything about it, no matter how mysterious. In their military minds, this was simply a threat to be identified, analyzed, and neutralized. So they listened. As you may know, gentlemen, Tesla continued, I've been working with new energy sources, and I can tell you there are far more powerful sources around us than anything we currently use. The power of nature is so immense that I lack the words to describe it. But I did not complete my research. I was stopped. Everyone waited for him to continue. By what? Donovan finally asked. I decided not to continue, Tesla replied. I felt we are not ready yet. Not ready? King was almost indignant. How can we possibly be unready if our enemies are... I'm not sure what they're doing, Tesla objected, but I couldn't control the energy. I could have destroyed the Earth, he concluded quietly. Then suddenly he looked at Hoover with clouded eyes and said in the voice of a little boy, Can I go back to my birds, sir? Hoover looked at Robert, gave him a signal, and Robert immediately approached Tesla, gently took his arm and led him to the far corner of the room. Tesla did not protest. He submitted like a tired child, allowing his mother to put him to bed after a long, eventful day. Let's excuse this man, Hoover said to the others. He is a genius, and he made an incredible effort to come here. Every man nodded in agreement. Now, gentlemen, Hoover continued, may I ask, do you understand why you are here? Yes, we do, came the chorus of voices. We are here, Hoover said, to evaluate the danger we face and to take the necessary measures to prepare for any future attack that might come from forces of unknown natural power. But more than that, he paused, ensuring every word sank in. Not only must we create an equal power to protect ourselves and perhaps to strike back, but we must also go back in time. He paused again, letting the gravity of his words settle. We must go back in time to manipulate our past in such a way. He paused once more, expecting questions. None came. That it creates a new, favorable reality for us. The officers remained silent, struggling to comprehend what they had just heard. Sir, Donovan said, the man who had asked the most questions and whose clarity was helpful, did I get this right? We're here to launch a secret program to develop a weapon equal to, or more powerful than, Germany's, and also to do something with time. I'm a bit confused on that part. Hoover finally smiled. This was the reaction he had wanted. His presentation was achieving its goal. Gentlemen, he said, the decision to start this new secret project was made at the highest levels of our government. You will all be responsible for implementing it. No one outside this room must ever know its true purpose. Officer King, you will resurrect our Atlantic fleet from the so-called patrol force. You will command both naval and air units in that region. Your main task, to build a powerful force capable of withstanding any attack from German flying saucers. This is an enormous task, but you are the man I trust with it. You must work in full cooperation with every person present here today. Yes, sir, King responded. Officer Strong, you will land in Bermuda in a few weeks. Your task is to build a military base that will serve as our forward outpost in the Atlantic. It will also be a hub for our scientific experiments led by our most advanced scientists to develop new weapons, defenses against flying saucers, and to penetrate the past. This is an extremely dangerous mission. I cannot predict the difficulties you may face, physical, temporal, displacements in time. Some experiments conducted by Tesla aimed at penetrating the past were unsuccessful. Many lives were lost. Some participants vanished entirely, lost in time. They might be dead. They might be alive, but in another era, or trapped somewhere in the void between today and yesterday, stuck forever. All of this I wanted to explain, but there's no time now. You'll learn more later. For now, I only want to assign your tasks and ensure your efforts are coordinated. You are the man to succeed with this. Understood? Yes, sir, Strong responded. And you, Donovan, you must create the most effective intelligence agency in the world. We must know everything relevant to our defense, our future, our well-being, no matter what it is. We must know nearly everything happening around the globe. This is your task. It's as vast as your talent. You can do it. Yes, sir, Donovan replied. It will be my greatest honor. Finally, Hoover became very serious. You will never communicate anything related to this meeting or the matters discussed here with anyone outside this room. Furthermore, you must not contact each other directly about this. All communication must go through my assistant, Robert, a man I trust completely. Hoover pointed to Robert, who was still gently attending to Tesla in the corner. This young man has proven himself the most reliable for this task. If you see him in your office, you must comply with anything he requires. Also, if anyone outside this room attempts to contact you regarding this matter, be aware. It may be a provocation. Understood? Yes, sir. The senator touched the window glass with his palm as if trying to push time away. Now he could believe he had actually lived that life. He could scarcely believe this was really happening to him. It felt so remote, so unreal, yet it was true. That meeting had been the most important moment of his life. Had it never taken place, he might have been merely one of the most talented diplomats in American history. But no matter how heroic that sounds, it would not compare to who he was now, the one who ruled the world. Well, it all started then, at that meeting in 1941. A few days after the meeting, on the 1st of February 1941, the Atlantic Fleet was resurrected and reorganized from the patrol force. Alongside the Pacific Fleet and the Asiatic Fleet, it was placed under the command of a full admiral, catapulting its commander, Ernest J. King, from a 2-star to a 4-star rank. Around the same time, the Foreign Broadcast Information Service, FBIS, was established. In February 1941, President Roosevelt directed that $150,000 be allocated for the creation of the Foreign Broadcast Monitoring Service, FBMS, under the authority of the Federal Communications Commission. The FBMS was tasked with recording, translating, transcribing, and analyzing shortwave propaganda radio broadcasts beamed at the United States by the Axis powers. The chief of the FBMS also oversaw America's entry into an agreement with Bermuda and the British government to establish new military bases on the small island in the Atlantic. Colonel Alden G. Strong landed in Bermuda on Sunday the 20th of April. Within hours of his arrival, he had drawn up a joint defense plan for the islands, deploying his troops as follows. One 2-gun battery of 8-inch coast defense guns was to be placed at Fort Victoria on St. George's Island and another on Somerset Island, not far from the U.S. naval base. A similarly sized battery of 155mm guns was to be stationed on Cooper's Island near the Army base and another on Hamilton Island near Riddles Bay. The infantry company, quartered at the Castle Harbour Hotel, was to serve as the mobile reserve. Ronald arrived in Bermuda a few weeks later, appointed as chief of a secret experiment involving new energies, with the mission to develop a classified weapon that would secure America's victory in the upcoming battle against an enemy not yet known.
End of chapter. To be continued. Copyright 2025. All rights reserved.